The following announcement has been paid for by the new Howell order.
Whether the team is giving us the highest of highs or the bluest of blues, we'll cover it all here on Commander's Nightly News. Of course, I'm your host, Louie T. Thank you for joining me. Let's get to tonight's lead story. So, had a chance to watch the film with the mob. Shout out to the mob. Stand up. We in the building. You know what it is. Shout out to all of those supporting over on Patreon as well. Can't thank you guys enough. Had a chance to sit down and chop it up with those guys and gals and you know, comb over the film, kind of see some of the good, the bad, the ugly. And with that said, as usual, upon further review, right? So a couple of items that I want to highlight, talk about as we head into week 10 against the Seattle Seahawks. But before we put a nice, before we move on, let's put a nice, pretty bow on week 9 versus the Patriots. So upon further review, let's talk about the defense for a second, and then we'll move over to the offensive side of the ball. One of the things that I have been hearing a lot of people say, and this is when I can tell that people aren't really, you know, doing their due diligence. I don't like to, you know, go into, I don't like to point and wag my finger at people for not watching film. That's not everybody's thing, okay? I get irritated when people make assumptions and they're not watching it, though. That's when I get perturbed. Like, if you're not watching it, you're not watching it. That's fine. It's not for everybody. But don't make blanket statements and don't come out and criticize specific players if you're not watching it. And then if you are watching it and you don't see what's happening, then you don't even know what you're watching, right? So one of the things I was critical of, and I often do this, in the moment, I'm hypercritical of either coaches or players. Then I go back and watch the film and I'm like, oh, well, here's what happened, right? And that's why I think it's so critical to watch the all dub deuces, because as a fan, you're very emotional in the moment. Things happen during the game, and all you see is the TV copy, and a play didn't get made. And whatever happened, and this is why it didn't happen, but there's always a story behind why something didn't happen, right? And sometimes it's as simple as De'Ami Brown didn't catch the ball, right? Something as simple as, oh, Jahan dropped the ball. Sometimes it's much bigger than that. You know, there was a breakdown here in protection. This guy ran the wrong route, or he ran it at the wrong depth. You know, you got 2 receivers in one spot. And so how in the hell did this happen? There's so many different layers you can get into, but I digress. That's besides the point. One of the things I was hypercritical of Jack Del Rio is not creating more one-on-one matchups for the defensive tackles in particular. Now with the defensive ends, who gives a shit if they get one-on-one, which they are going to get one-on-ones because nobody respects our defensive ends, nor should they, right? But the defensive tackles are the heart and soul of our defense now. And because of that, teams are going to go out of their way to scheme up our defensive tackles, which means a lot of times these guys are going to see double teams. I think it is imperative that they rush a certain way to avoid the double teams on both of them, or half-hearted double teams on both of them. Somebody's got to get singled up. And I said all of that to say this. Upon further review, Jack Del Rio is actually doing a good job at setting guys up, taking turns, getting one-on-ones, right? So by alignment, Jack Del Rio is setting up a situation where either Daron Payne or Jonathan Allen is supposed to get a one-on-one. Now, do they always take advantage of that one-on-one? Different story. Not always the case. I think they can do a better job of rushing. And I thought the rush looked a bit disjointed. It was the first game without Tez. And I think one of the things as fans we take for granted is the synchronicity between two guys that are used to playing next to one another. When you can look at a guy and know exactly how he's going to rush, you can play off of him and he can play off of you. It changes the dynamic of, you know, like one of the things Daron Payne said when Tez first was traded, he said, man, I loved rushing with that dude, right? And so it just sounds like, oh, I like playing with number 90. He was a cool dude. But what he was saying is we knew how to play off of each other because they were always, well, not always, they were usually on the same side with one another. right? Chase would usually rush against the other team's left tackle, and Montez would usually rush against the other team's right tackle. And so Sweat and Payne were usually on the same side. So when they would run games, twists and stunts, things of that nature, TE games, ET games, they would know how to run it off of each other. James Smith-Williams is usually on the same side with Daron Payne, and they looked out of sorts. The twists and the stunts, they did not look fluid. They looked very disjointed. James Smith-Williams looked lost half the damn time on his rushes. It just looked funky. It looked like the first time they had done it, which probably was the case because a lot of times those guys aren't all in the game at the same time. I'm pretty sure there are snaps that overlap every week where James Smith-Williams is on the field with Daron Payne, but not many, right? I mean, Chase Young was playing, 80% of the snap, and Montez Sweat was playing like 70% of the snaps. So there weren't a lot of opportunities for James Smith-Williams and Daron Payne to be on the field at the same time. So I don't think those two are in sync. But let's move that aside. I was complaining that guys are getting double teamed, and there's ways to get one-on-one matchups for your defensive tackles. I see the Rams do it all the time. I see the Chiefs do it with Chris Jones all the time. And Jack is doing that. And so I have to, apologize to Jack. Mistakes were made because what he's effectively doing is he's taking, and they're taking turns doing this, which is a good thing, giving John a chance to get some one-on-ones and giving Daron a chance to get some one-on-ones. What he's effectively doing is he's taking one of the defensive tackles and he's putting him directly in the A gap next to the in the very next gap to the defensive tackle, the other defensive tackle. So essentially, there's two A gaps. If you can visualize the offensive line, right? There's two A gaps. Both of them are on opposite sides of the center. So there's a left side of the center and there's a right side of the center. Left hand, right? That left side has the left guard next to him. That's an A gap between the left guard and the center. On the right side, the right guard in the center, there's another A gap, right? So those are the A gaps. So what Jack is effectively doing is if Jonathan Allen is getting the one-on-one and he wants to set that up, he'll take Daron Payne, slide him over to the A gap between the left guard and the center, right? Which forces, the right guard and the center, which forces the double team to Daron, right? He'll rush right between them. The guard and the center have no choice but to both block him, which then gives your defensive end, the left tackle one-on-one, and your defensive tackle, the right guard or left guard one-on-one. And then he would do the opposite when it was Daron's turn. He would take Jonathan Allen, put him in the gap, the A gap between the left guard and the center. He would rush in between those two, forcing the center and the left guard to both have to block him. Then Daron gets one-on-one with the right guard, and the defensive end gets one-on-one with the right tackle. Now, I didn't love how they were rushing in those one-on-one situations. When you rush too far outside, and Payne was doing this every single time, he would rush outside towards the tackle, and now the tackle would just get a piece of him. So it almost acted as if it was a pseudo double team anyway. So I'm like, you can't do that. You got to rush to the inside. I think the best move that he could deploy there when Jonathan Allen is forcing that double team is a swim, right? A quick swim inside, because that center isn't there now to help. And if he does come over and help late, it's probably going to be a holding penalty if you win immediately. And that's one of Daron's best moves, is a quick swim. So I hope he watches that, sees how they're being played there, and start to take advantage of that with quick inside moves. I'm not saying go inside every time. You can't be predictable, but he was going outside almost every time, and that was becoming predictable. But the overarching theme, the point that I'm trying to hammer home, is Jack is actually setting these guys up for opportunities to win one-on-one, and that's the most important thing. So that's upon further review. I'd like to see that continue. I'd like to see them rush a little bit better. Ron alluded to they're going to rush better this week. We'll see, because that was piss poor pathetic, and we can get into that more, but I've already done that on the film, so I'm not really going to do that here. But they got to be better rushing the quarterback. But at least Jack is giving our best guys opportunities to win one-on-one. F.A. Obata inside, upon further review, is something that I would like to see more of. F.A. was on the field for what, 14 snaps, I believe we saw, right? 2 of those snaps came inside as a defensive tackle on third downs. He won on both of them and applied pressure, including the game-clinching interception. Go back and watch that play. Watch F.A. win inside as a 3-tech, right? Watch him win inside and get to the quarterback and force that throw. Now, again, Mac Jones, that wasn't a terrible throw. It was really good defense off the hands of his receiver into the hands of Quan Martin, but there was pressure. And that pressure was by F.A. Obata, and he applied pressure twice from that defensive tackle position. So I'd like to see, Ron would always talk about positional flex and F.A.'s ability to kick inside, and I would always mock him because rarely did we see F.A. do anything from inside, let alone even really get snaps there. Now with, the defensive ends being cleared out, there's more opportunities. F.A. playing inside, not a bad deal. Not a bad deal at all. I'd actually like to see a little bit more of that. I think they've got to figure out what kind of, now that you don't have Sweat and Chase and Tez anymore, you got to figure out what is your best package to get after the quarterback. You may have to make up some packages, where you take one of these defensive tackles off the field. My guess would be Jonathan Allen. I'd take him off, keep Duran in, F.A. in at defensive tackle along with Duran, and then 2 defensive ends. That could be your best package of getting to the quarterback on third downs. I know they're not going to take Jonathan Allen off the field, but I'd consider doing something like that sometimes, not all the time. Upon further review, and I get it, it's the Patriots, and they're not the best rushing offense in football, and we'll see much better rush offenses throughout the year. The Dolphins, the 49ers come to mind. However, I think this rush defense is going to be fine. I was a little bit apprehensive about the rush defense post Tez and Chase because they're such good run defenders. And compared to those guys, Casey Toohill and James Smith-Williams, they feel undersized. They're not. And I got to stop thinking like that. James Smith-Williams is 6'5", 6'6", 270. He's the same size, right? They're just proportioned differently, but he's the same size, probably even bigger than both Tez and Chase. So I got to stop acting as if these guys are small. Casey Toohill, he's 6'4", 6'5". He's not a small guy, right? Casey Toohill's like 6'4", 6'5", like 260. Like, I got to stop acting like these guys are chumps or they're small guys. Like, oh my God, how are we going to stop the run? They're fine, right? And what I was most proud of in the game against New England defensively is that we didn't have to go to the Cinco package very often. As a matter of fact, the only time we went to the Cinco package was when we had the Patriots backed up all the way inside. When Chris Rodriguez made the tackle at the 5, we had them backed up all the way inside their 5-yard line. They went to the Cinco package because they knew New England was going to try to run the football. That was the only time. Other than that, we stayed in our base defense, that 4-2-5 defensive front, and we stopped the run just fine without having to overcommit. It was actually, other than the 64-yard run, it was good run defense all day long. John Ridgeway, and I'll tell you something else. Upon further review, John Ridgeway, the combination of him and Fedarian Mathis in at the same time, forget about running against that defensive look, right? Up the middle, at least, all right? You might be able to get to the perimeter against those guys, but running in between the tackles against Ridgeway and Mathis on the field at the same time, forget about it. Forget about it. Those two guys, and they're usually in at the same time, that's like running against a brick wall. Good luck. You're going to need it. Upon further review, here's what I think we need to do. Forbes needs to be good for this defense to maximize itself. Forbes gives us so much flexibility in the secondary when he is playing well. You could see how they could move Juice around, put him in the slot, move him outside, You can't do that if Forbes is struggling and you have to keep Juice essentially on the edge and Danny Johnson has to come inside, right? In order for this secondary and this defense, for that matter, to be at its best that it can possibly be, Emmanuel Forbes needs to be confident and needs to be on the field because it gives us more options. I used to be a proponent of Juice just staying outside. Juice has done a really good job inside this season. Like I no longer have fears about him being inside. If he's going to get beat, he's going to get beat. But I like Juice inside, especially, and this was always something that he was good at, even going back to his days at Minnesota. He's always been good underneath in coverage, is Benjamin St. Juice. Short to intermediate stuff, he's good. He's solid. He does a good job of playing sticky coverage, sometimes too sticky, but rarely does he get flagged. However that happens, don't ask me, I don't know. But he's usually right there in the hip pocket. Now, he doesn't pick shit off. We know that. But he plays great coverage. And so I like Juice inside. But he can only go inside if you trust Emmanuel Forbes outside. This is going to be a game that kind of tests that theory. Because last week was an easy week to trust Forbes out there, put him up against. It didn't matter who the Patriots put across from him. They weren't going to win. They don't have any receivers. We talked about that all week long. He should be fine this game. He already knew what it was. He was posting on social media before the game like, yeah, I'm about to get my shit off, right? He was posting pictures like, I'm back. He was like, oh, he must be starting. No, he's posting I'm back because he knows he's playing against bums, right? There's not a single guy he watched on tape and said, hey, I can't blanket his ass. So he won't be posting that shit this week. I guarantee you that. With DK and Lockett and Jackson Smith and Jigba coming up this week, I bet you he won't be posting before the game this week. Anyway, in order for us to be at our best, Forbes needs to be in the secondary, playing confident football and being a viable option to put on the field at any given time. It gives us the best possible unit that we can put on the field when he's one of the three corners. So that's defensively everything that I saw, without getting into too many extra unnecessary details. All right. Offensively, I want to start with, upon further review, Byron Pringle is going to play a much bigger role than any of us anticipated before the season started. Now, I get it. His role, him and Jameson Crowder's role, expanded with no Curtis Samuel. But even when Curtis comes back, and just think about it this way, even when Curtis was in the lineup, how many times have we taken shots to Byron Pringle one-on-one outside? Think about the two Philadelphia games. I think he got a deep shot in each of those Philadelphia games. He's gotten targets before, right? Even when Curtis is healthy. Pringle, I think, is going to be a guy that, one, Eric Bieniemy trusts him. He knows the offense, and he was with Bieniemy in Kansas City. So that's number one. Number two, I just think he's a guy that's a lunch pail, hard hat type of guy, going to do his job, going to do it really well. And it's a guy, coaches, they have these guys. And for Ronald Rivera, David Mayo is that guy. John Bostic used to be. They're just guys you trust, right? They may not be the most athletically gifted, or they may not be this, or they may not be that, but I know I can trust them to be where they're supposed to be, do what they're supposed to do, and give me 110% maximum effort on every snap that they're out there. And there's something comforting about those types of players for coaches. I think Byron Pringle is one of those types of guys for Eric Bieniemy. I know if I put him in the game, he's going to give me everything he's got, and he's going to do it the right way, whether it's blocking, running a route, whatever, right? So I think Pringle is a guy that, back of your mind, you should be thinking, hey, we're probably going to see a lot more of three the remainder of this season. And he's going to be a solid part of this offense moving forward. I want to make sure that I give credit where credit is due. Upon further review, I don't think I mentioned this one time in the post game. I don't think I mentioned this one time. Maybe I did after the game was over, and I went through the keys to victory. I may have mentioned this once, but I don't really recall mentioning this. Tress Way was freaking awesome on Sunday. And I know some of it was we almost every possession, aside from the very first one of the game, Tressway or our offense got a first down, at least one, right? So it put Tress in a position where he could punt the football and have it fair caught inside the 20 or inside the 10 or whatever, right? But there's a special art to not just kicking the ball in the end zone. Like, I don't think there were any that were downed by Washington at the 7-yard line. Like, they let it go and those guys got down. And this wasn't one of those weeks. This was, he put that thing in the air for 4.7 seconds of hang time, which allowed guys to get down there and force the return man to fair catch it at the 14. We'll take that, right? Or he put that hang time on it. There's no fair catch on this one, but now the gunners are down there. Everybody's down there. Now the guy's running in reverse, and Chris Rodriguez tackles him at the 5. Well, that's Tress. Because if Tress kicks it on a line drive, those guys aren't down there. Now you get a good return. So I've been critical at times of Tress this year, right? When he's killing it, he needs to be praised as well. He was outstanding, so much so he was named the NFC Special Teams Player of the Week. That's the second time an honor has been bestowed on a Commander player in the last 4 weeks. Crowder got it in week 6 against the Falcons. Now 3 weeks later, Tressway gets it in week 9 against the Patriots. So special teams has been really good. Sly's been kicking the ball. Hey, I dare I say I don't even need to bring this up. I'm going to do it anyway. Find some wood, everybody. Pause. Cam Cheeseman, haven't mentioned him since week 1 or week 2 against Denver. Special teams has been outstanding. And Tressway he's starting to get back into his groove, right? So just wanted to mention that. Last but not least, Sam's growth upon further review is noticeable. But I still think he's got a ways to go, right? And there's still some things that he can do better. I still think there's some things this offense can do better from a protection standpoint. But you like the growth. You like what you're seeing. And there's little nuances and subtleties that you see and you go, okay, I see what you did there, right? But this offense as a whole still has, there were so many plays that I watched. And I'm still going, there's no way. And again, I'm not in the room. I don't know what these guys are supposed to be doing. So I can't say this with any definitiveness whatsoever, right? But I know as a fan, but someone who has played, not at a very high level, as I've mentioned before, but I've been around enough people, I've studied enough football to know there's no way that we're supposed to be running these routes with guys that close to each other. That's not how football plays are drawn up. You're not looking to bring another defender over to an intended receiver. That's not how you do this, right? There are too many times where I look and we've got receivers in the same vicinity. That even the Jahan Dotson touchdown, you can't tell me that him and Terry are supposed to be in the same vicinity. Somebody ran their route at the wrong depth. Somebody ran a wrong release. Someone was supposed to release outside. They went inside. I don't know what occurred, right? But I'm telling you, there's no way Jahan should be catching that seam ball, and Terry is right there on a deep post, and his guy is able to come over and try to defend that pass. There's no way that that's supposed to be how it's drawn up. And too often, I look and I'm like, why is there another guy right there when the ball is being caught? Like there seems to always be another defender or another receiver in the vicinity of one of our guys who's catching the football. And again, I know that this is still a new system. Everybody's still learning, but okay, half of the season is gone. We got to clean some of this shit up. And so Sam's learning, he's evolving, he's growing, he's still making some mistakes. This is to be expected. This is built into the process that I talked about before the season started. Like, there are going to be some things where it's going to just continue to be a work in progress. But you see him getting rid of the football. You see him, leaving the pocket. I just think there are some things that he can clean up still, like a great example. He took a one-on-one shot at the end of the game. And I told you guys this in the moment. Mob, I told you guys this in the moment. I told you this after the game was over. We went through the film, and it was even more. And I told you, we're watching the TV copy, so I can't tell you if there was a lurker, right, spying and waiting for Sam to try to go across the middle to Jahan on that final third down that would have iced the game. He decides to take the one-on-one. And normally, I got no qualms with you taking the one-on-one. I don't care if it's first, second, or third down. You get one-on-one on the outside, take it. But in that situation, when you only need 6 yards and the game's on the line, I don't need you going for the jugular vein. That's not what I'm looking for here. Second quarter, 3rd and 6, you get one-on-one, take the damn shot. Third quarter, you get one-on-one, 3rd and 6, take the shot. First quarter, you get one-on-one, 3rd and 6, take the shot. Hell, fourth quarter, not with the game on the line, but early stages, mid-portion of the fourth quarter, you get one-on-one, 3rd and 6, take the shot. But with the game on the line, less than 2 minutes to go, you need a first down and the game is over. The opposition has no timeouts. I don't want you taking that shot if there's another play open. And Jahan's wide open on the dig. There's plenty of time. There's no rush. Hit Jahan on the dig route. Let's pack our things and let's go home with this dub, with the defense never having to take the field again. Again, part of the maturation process, right? So there's still some things he can clean up. There's still some footwork things. He's kind of moving a ton in the pocket, where you see him, you're like, you don't need to necessarily slide over. But if that makes you comfortable, I'm not going to tell you what you should or shouldn't do, right? If you're going to throw to the right and you feel like I need to slide to the right to make that throw better, knock yourself out. If you're throwing to the left and you want to slide to the left, sometimes you might slide into some trouble. Right? That was part of the problem early in the season, is he would move around in the pocket and he would move into sacks. He's not doing that as much, but he's still doing it. So anyway, I digress. A lot of good from this game. I said this, I think, to a Giants fan. The best thing that happened to us this season was that Giants game. It hurt like hell. Losing to the Giants, only scoring 7 points. But so many changes have come of that game. Whether it's how EB has been calling the plays, the amount of stuff that they've given to Sam, what they've put on his plate, essentially, they've put more responsibility on him, and he's handled that. So it's allowed him to make checks at the line of scrimmage and, get rid of the football, or if he sees zero coverage like he did against the Patriots, he was able to tell, hey, you go deep. I'm going to get it to you, right? And maybe that's why Terry and Jahan were right next to each other, because Sam might have told Jahan, you run a go route. And that wasn't supposed to be his route initially. But whatever the case may be, that Giants game has, in effect, it forced offensive line changes. And, Sadiq's injury helped with that. But they were going to move on from Gates regardless, right? And Larson isn't perfect. I don't want you guys, have made Larson into the best center in the NFL, right? He's not. He's still Tyler Larson, but he's a huge upgrade over Nick Gates, and that's for sure, right? At the end of the day, that Giants game forced us to shuffle around the deck at offensive line. It forced EB to reassess what he was doing as a play caller. It forced them to give Sam more responsibility, and it forced Sam to be even more introspective and more decisive, right? And the end result is the last 2 weeks, this offense has looked like what we thought it would look like. Now, minus the points last week. The 31 against Philadelphia is exactly what we need moving forward. The 20 against New England got it done, but that's not what you're aiming for. But the 400 yards of offense, the 9 of 17 on third downs, The completion percentage, well, it wasn't the greatest, but it was good enough, right? The moving of the football, we got to be better in the red zone. We were not good in the red zone this week, and that's not who we've been. But everything since the Giants game has just looked so much better on offense. And I really think that Giants game was almost like a wake-up call of sorts. Anyway, I digress. Let's move on. Let's put a bow on that. We're done with the Patriots game. Glad we got the dub. Let's move on to Seattle. And so we go to in other news. We heard from head coach Ronald Rivera today, along with quarterback Sam Howell. We'll talk about what those two had to say. But before we do that, as we always do, you know what time it is. Let's take a look at the injury report for both teams heading into the Week 10 contest against the Seattle Seahawks. So we start with the good guys. And first of all, I like the list. I like the short nature of the list. That's number one. I like the reasons for guys missing practice. That's number two. And I like the participation list. That's number three. This is a great list. This is as good as it's been probably, I'd say, since week maybe 5 or 6. Probably the Falcons game. It looked something like this, right? The first 3 guys aren't even injured. All missed practice for various reasons. I've always told you guys, Wednesday is the day that you can miss practice. Wednesday is more of a mental day, okay? I had somebody try to tell me once upon a time, Wednesday is the most important day of practice. You need to be out there. It's the install day. Yeah, no. Yeah, it is the install day, but you don't need to actually physically practice on Wednesday. That's the day that if you have an ailment and you need more time, Wednesday's the day. I just need you to be mentally locked in to what we're trying to accomplish. So you see teams have guys miss practice on Wednesday. It's nothing. Just lock in mentally. Thursday is when shit gets real. Like, I need you out here now. Now we've implemented what we want to do. Now we need to actually go out here and practice it against the scout team. Need you out here for these reps. Ron and company took the pads off today, so take that into consideration. There were no pads, so if you see a guy limited or full, that's not necessarily a reflection of where they would be from a practice standpoint had pads been on and it been a full padded contact practice, right? So take that into consideration. But Jonathan Allen, Jahan Dotson, and Kendall Fuller all missed practice, but none of them for football-related injuries or reasons. Jahan had a personal matter, and as you can see, Jonathan Allen and Kendall Fuller both got vet rest. So that's great. Curtis Samuel, the toe, I'm going to be honest with you. I'm shocked to see he was limited. I told you, I'm looking at the Cowboys game and saying, hey, I'll see you in Dallas on Thanksgiving. He may not play this week, but the fact that he's limited, he didn't practice at all last week. Even on walkthroughs, he wasn't a part of them last week. So for him to be limited, that's a good sign. Now, again, may not equal to him playing this week, but it's trending in the right direction. I'll say that. Manuel Forbes, Achilles, full. Hey, he went full practice today. Again, tomorrow will be more of a telling sign as to what direction all of these guys are going to go in. Really, Curtis Samuel and Emmanuel Forbes Jr. So what that means is we came out of New England relatively unscathed. That's a good thing. Meanwhile, Seattle's got a bunch of guys, and again, don't really focus in here on the DMPs, the limited, the full, because most of these guys are going to play, right? Now, what you have to focus on is the nature of the injury. So Jamal Adams, vet rest, he's not even injured, okay? So just take him off the list. Jordan Brooks, hamstring. That's significant. That's a hamstring. So keep your eye on that. DJ Dallas, shoulder. He can play with a shoulder, right? So I wouldn't be too concerned about that. Keep an eye on it, though. Colby Parkinson, bicep. Jaron Reed, tooth. Right? Like, and I make the funny face like a tooth, but if it's really hurting you, you're not going to be able to play, right? But we'll see. I don't expect Jackson Smith and Jigba, Kenneth Walker III, I don't expect Jaron Reed, any of these guys to miss the game. we'll see what happens tomorrow. We'll see what their participation is for Thursday. If we still see a bunch of DMPs, then things get really interesting. I don't think that's what the case is going to be. Remember, this is a West Coast team we're talking about. So when I shoot the video tomorrow, we're probably not going to know their practice status. So this is something we'll have to monitor almost a day in delay, if that makes sense. Anthony Bradford, Trey Brown, Charles Cross, Tyler Lockett, and Derike Young all were limited in practice today. Tight end Noah Fant, Derek Hall, and Kenny McIntosh were all full participants. So right now, there are a lot of notable names on this list, but I don't think any of them are missing the game. I don't think Lockett, Charles Cross, Kenneth Walker III, Jackson Smith and Jigba, Jaron Reed. Jordan Brooks is the only guy who I look at as a mainstay and an integral part of this Seahawks football team that may not play. Hamstrings are significant injuries, especially for linebackers. I'll keep an eye on him. Everybody else, I expect them to play, personally. So there's that. So you get back to in other news, and let's talk about what Ronald had to say. Get him out of the way real quick. It's becoming a thing now. When anybody asks Ronald about the season and how things have gone or how he thinks they can go. So the first question of the press conference, he's got to stop doing this. Ronald's got to stop doing this. It's getting to the point now where it's starting to turn into the new positional flex. Or the truth of the matter is, like, it's getting to that point where you're like, bro. Or if you were talking about me, anyway, I digress, right? It's getting to that point. They asked Ronald about the win streak that he customarily goes on, the team goes on in November, right? And, one of the reasons I don't think it's coming is because everybody thinks it's coming, right? And the best ones are the ones you don't see coming. We didn't see it coming last year when it happened. It just happened, right? After we beat the Bears, who thought we were about to get hot? We barely beat the Bears. We should have lost that game. And even though Heineke came in, he was awful in the first half against Green Bay. Who thought we were going to beat? Well, I thought we were going to beat the Packers. I said that. I predicted that before the season started, but that's nor here nor there. I didn't think we were going to beat the Packers in the moment. They had been struggling, but I'm like, Like, it just happened last season. The streak just happened. The 6 out of 7 just happened. People are looking for it, actively looking for the win streak this year. So I don't think it's going to happen. But instead of Ron just kind of embracing the streak or leaning into it or just saying, hey, we're going to take it one game at a time, which is what he probably should have said. He totally deflects and says, well, it's all about the quarterback. You got to stop doing that, Ronald. You got to stop it. You got to stop talking about the quarterback's development. And first of all, the quarterback has a name, and anybody watching your press conference knows his name. It's Sam. So you can just, instead of saying it's all about the quarterback's development, you can just say it's all about Sam's development. But you don't even need to say that because you've told us 50,000 times already that it's about the quarterback's development. That's not going to save your job, Ronald. Okay? And eventually, later on in the press conference, he got around to the fact that it's all about wins and losses in this league, and we got to win football games. Bingo, Ronald. Ding, 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 Ronald. So you can stop talking to us about that's not going to save your job, is essentially what I'm trying to say. So you continuing to repeat over and over again that it's the quarterback's development that's important. It may be important for the long-term health of this franchise. You won't be a part of it if you don't start winning some games. So, yeah, his development will be great for the next guy, but it won't help you any. So you can stop talking about his development. That would have helped you last year. It's not going to help you this year, buddy. He talked about the noise in Seattle. That definitely is always a problem for opposing teams. And he said, we've worked on that in various weeks throughout the season. We've been in some, loud environments. Denver is typically a loud environment. Philadelphia, yeah. But, you know, the road is the road for most places. Kansas City and Seattle hit a little bit different. They tend to get a little bit louder than most environments. And so they're going to have to be on it. Like, the one thing we can't afford, and Ronald said, you know, as much, we can't have the pre-snap penalties. That's the thing we avoided this week. And even last week against Philadelphia, we avoided the pre-snap penalties that put us behind the sticks. The Giants game was the worst game of the season from a penalty standpoint. We couldn't get out of our own way. We got to find a way to be clean pre-snap against Seattle. Lining up, can't have illegal formations, can't have two guys moving at the start of the snap or not resetting, can't have false starts, which is usually common in Seattle. Like, these are the things they're going to have to clean up and make sure that they're on top of their game. Terry talked about it in the locker room today. Like, our execution is going to have to be flawless out in Seattle. And that includes pre-snap. And Ronald talked about that. You know, he talked about Cam Carroll. And, you know, it was so funny because when he talked about Cam, he complimented him, but it was like he was searching for nice things to say other than he's been really solid for us. They want more from him, right? They value him. And if they were to remain here, he'd be signed to a long-term deal. Trust me. But he's not going to get like safety top dollar. And if he's looking for that, I don't think he's going to get it here. And honestly, I don't think he's going to get that anywhere. I don't think he's valued around the league like he's valued here. It's almost like a used car, right? You value your used car. It holds value because it still works. And the Kelly Blue book is $7,000 for the car. So you're asking for, you know, $6,000 for the whip. And somebody's like, I'll give you $4,000. And you're like, nah, bro, I can't do it for $4,000, man. And you're like, the guy's like, all right, $5,000. And you're like, nah, I can't do it for $5,000, man. I need $6,000. You're like, work with me. I'm like, I am. The Kelly Blue Book is $7,000. I'm already cutting you a deal right now at $6,000. I can't. It's worth more to me than $4,000. If you can't meet me at $6,000, I'm gonna just keep the car. It's worth more to me than to sell it to you for $4,000. I don't need the money that bad, right? That's kind of how I think they feel about the NFL feels about Cam Carroll. And I can't say that with 100% certainty. I don't know that. But I think he's of more value to us than the rest of the league because, he's not a playmaker. He's just a really smart guy that knows where to be and does his job at a very high level. And you need guys like that on your team. And I want him back here in Washington after the season's done. But it was just funny listening to Ron try to struggle to describe the impact that Cam Carroll has. Because he can't say he's a playmaker. He's getting his hands on the football. You know, he just had to talk about how savvy he is, which he is a really smart, heady football player. He has forced a fumble this year. So that's a good thing. He forced a fumble against Philadelphia in the second game. So that's a good thing. Anyway, he talked about Chase, you know, one final time. They brought up Chase and what he had to say at his presser. And, you know, Ronald was like, he took the high road. Too late for that. But okay, whatever. Glad that he did that. I'll give him some props there. Anyway, I digress. Sam, he spoke about every week he gets the same, 3 or 4 questions, and then maybe 2 or 3 different questions. One of the questions he gets every week is his development. Hey, how do you think you improved? Like, do I have to go through this with y'all every single week? How did I improve this week? And he's giving them some version of the same answer that he gave them the week prior and the answer that he gave them the week prior to that. Yeah, I thought I made better decisions. I thought I made quicker decisions, except for the one right before the half. I thought I made quick, good decisions, getting the ball out of my hands, getting it into the playmaker's hands. Like he's saying the same thing every week. You can stop asking him that question every single week. All right. He's getting more and more comfortable. They did ask him about, him and EB's relationship and how they're growing together, which is a more pertinent question than how did you improve this week? And he pretty much was like, yeah, man, you know, we're really growing. EB, I've you know, kind of gotten a good feel for who he is as a play caller, and I see him working. You know, I see how long he stays in the building, and I know he wants this bad, and you know that's infectious. You know, and you know, as he's starting to call plays, I'm starting to get a better feel for what he's looking at and what he wants from me, and so we're starting to grow together as he gets more comfortable with the things I do well. I get more comfortable in what he's looking for when he calls the play. I think we're starting to get better as a team, you know. And he talked about the players around him, the offensive line, the receivers, et cetera, et cetera. And, you know, Sam's always making sure everybody gets credit, right? And I love that about him as well. He talked about the environment, Seattle, how loud it's going to potentially be. He said he's going to have to talk to some more people because he said most of the places that we've been, they only really get loud on third down. He said, I got to see if Seattle's a little bit different. I'm saying, Sam, Seattle's a lot different. Yeah. This isn't, and he said the loudest place they've played so far is Denver. But and I think in his mind, he's like, I played in college stadiums that were way louder than anything I've faced in the NFL. And he's not wrong, because in college stadiums, they're packing 100,000 fans into these stadiums sometimes. You go to Penn State, Happy Valley, it's 105, 110,000 people at the big house in Michigan, right? You know, he talked about Virginia Tech being the loudest stadium that he's played in, Lane Stadium. And, you know, those college atmospheres are just raucous and crazy. It's nothing. The NFL pales in comparison to a college stadium in that environment. So you play big time college football, you've played in some really big atmospheres, some really loud stadiums. I don't know if that really is going to affect a guy that's played at a Power 5 conference. You know, pretty sure he's been to Death Valley at Clemson, and it's been super loud. Pretty sure, like he said, Virginia Tech. I remember the first game of his last season, his junior season, he lost. It was dumb loud that day, right? Stupid loud. He's been to Florida State in a hostile environment. It gets really loud, right? So Seattle's a different animal. Seattle's more like a college atmosphere. So I think this is going to be a little bit different for him. He's going to realize this ain't like the rest. But he had a little laugh. You know, he doesn't really smile or laugh a ton at these press conferences, but he did share a little laugh with the media because I want to say, who was it that asked the question? I forget what his name is. And it was when he asked the question, I knew who it was. I could hear his voice and I knew who it was. Now I can't think of his name. I can see his face. I can't think of his name. But he asked, Sam a question about EB, and he said, EB getting into his bag. And Sam thought about it for a second. He said, did you just say EB in his bag? And he's like, yeah, sorry. I'm like, why are you apologizing? That's just, you're hip. You got a little bit of the lingo. It's okay, Sam. It's trying to give you credit for saying something in a language that someone his age can understand. You don't have to apologize for that. But, Sam got a little chuckle out of that, and everybody laughed, and then he answered the question. And I like to see that. I like to see Sam just loosen up a little bit. When you're essentially a rookie, which Sam is this year, for all intents and purposes, he's going to be making his 11th start on Sunday. You try to be buttoned up. You try to be professional. You want to be locked in, but it's okay to kind of let your hair down a bit, or in the case of shoulders, just kind of relax those shoulders a bit. Don't have to be as uptight. Sam's got a personality. I told you he's a lot like a guy like Daron Payne, Montez Sweat, where if you know him and you're around him, he's a funny dude. And I can tell just by watching him, his mannerisms, but also seeing him in certain instances, like the preseason game. If you remember when the streaker ran on the field, like he got a kick out of that, right? So you can tell he's got a personality. Jahan talked about it when they were going to Chick-fil-A, some of the stuff they were talking about. You can tell once he gets to know you, he's got a personality, when he was talking to Kay Adams out at camp, you could see like he's got a personality. So I'd like to see him show a little bit more of that with the media, and that will happen over time. Guys usually tend to loosen up as they get to know you and they become more comfortable. They loosen up, and I think he'll do that eventually. Anyway, Sam Fortier. Thank you, Metaphor. It was Sam Fortier. I couldn't think of his name, but it was Sam Fortier for sure. All right. Let's go ahead and get our first look at the Seattle Seahawks. So this game is going to be really interesting on a number of different fronts. We'll talk about a lot of the things that I'm going to kind of introduce to you today, tomorrow when we go behind enemy lines. But Seattle is really intriguing. They're a bit of an enigma right now because Seattle early in the season stands for week 1, where they struggled against the Rams. They only scored 13 points, got dominated in week 1, and embarrassed at home, right? Didn't see it coming. The next 2 weeks, they bounce back and they score 37 points in each of the next 2 contests, including on the road at Detroit, right? Geno throws for over 300. They go in there and they shock the Lions fresh off of their Thursday night football upset of the defending Super Bowl champions. The following week, they go back home. They beat up Carolina. They score another 37 points, and you're thinking they're picking right up where they left off last year. Here they go again. And then after that, I don't know what happened, but their offense hasn't been the same since. The next week, they go on the road to the Giants. They scored 24. They beat them 24-3. But if you recall that game, the defense sacked Daniel Jones 11 times. It was an awful performance by the Giants offensively. Their defense dominated, including a 97-yard interception return for a touchdown by their rookie, Devin Witherspoon. And so their defense dominated that game, set up most of their scoring opportunities. Geno really didn't do much. And then they went on their bye. They come off the bye. They struggled against Cincinnati in the red zone, lost the game. They've won games. They beat the Rams the second time they saw them. They beat Arizona, right? Or I don't think they've seen Arizona. I mean, the Rams again. Did they? They might have. But I think they did. But all in all, no, it was the Browns. They beat Arizona and they beat the Browns, right? And those weren't impressive offensive performances, right? They eked by both of those games. And so, and in between there, I think there was one more loss. The Ravens one that we just saw. That was just an abomination. So essentially what I'm telling you is they've been really inconsistent and they haven't been good offensively in almost a month and a half. Going back to week 3 is the last time that they were a well-oiled machine offensively. They haven't been good on offense in the month of October into November, essentially. September was the last time they played the kind of football we know they're capable of playing offensively. So that's something to keep in mind, and we'll talk more about that. Another thing is they've been woefully bad in the red zone this season. That's part of the reason that they're not 7-1 or 6-2 right now. Instead, they're 5-3. Is because their red zone efficiency has been awful this season. We'll talk more about that. There are so many different things we can get into with this Seattle team. I'll just say this. We're more than capable of going to Seattle and winning. Everything the numbers suggest says that we got a shot. But the eye test is what I'm going by, and the eye test says we're in trouble. But we'll talk more about that tomorrow when we go behind enemy lines. Today is just the first look. This is a team that right now, they're struggling. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. Even the wins aren't the kind of wins. And again, in this league, you get them however you can get them. You take them how they come, right? And they found a way on the final possession of the game to beat Cleveland, right? Arizona, they were struggling with the Cardinals. That's family business. If it's not your business, stay out of it. So I'm staying out of it. But they struggled with them for 3 quarters before they ran away and won that game, 20-10. Okay, they struggled with Arizona. We struggled with Arizona. Okay, so at the end of the day, this team is there for the taking. Are we capable of taking advantage of them? Is the question. that remains to be seen. Anyway, I digress. Let's get to social media maneuvers. Shout out to all of those of you who support on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. Also, shout out to the mob. Y'all know what it is. We in the building. Let's get to the comment section and then we'll get out of here. All right. So we started off with my guy, JP, John Perez. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. JP writes, "Sup, Lou? First off, happy to say my dad is healthy. Praise God. Praise him. Won't he do it? Won't he do it? And home, but it's going to be a long road to recovery. That's all you were asking for was a chance. That's it. You'll take the long road to recovery. That's a small price to pay for the health of Pops. So that's great news, man. So glad to hear it. This Seattle game could decide if we're going to do anything meaningful the rest of the year. You know what, JP? I'm going to stop you right there, and we're going to elaborate on that because the title of this particular episode is something to the effect of what this Seattle game could potentially mean, right? And to me, this Seattle Seahawks game takes on a greater meaning because of what lies ahead. If you're going to do the streak thing, if you're going to try to get up to 500, past 500, and really make yourself a viable playoff team, you probably need to win this game. You know? Because, and I want you to think about it in this context. You're one game under 500. And, you know, at the podium today, people asked Sam about, you know, you're playing a Seattle team that's ahead of you in the stand. And Sam's like, yeah, I ain't paying attention to none of that shit. What I'm focused on is Seattle and trying to get them and beat them. Like, I'm not even worried about where they are in, you know, in relation to where we are. Like, that's not important. Let's just get a dub, right? And all of that other stuff will take care of itself. I'm not worried about Seattle from the standpoint of tiebreakers, none of that. Look, you're 4-5 right now, right? On the season, you're 4-5. The Giants are looming next week. Again, we struggle with them, but if we don't bust they shit open next week, then Ronald and company need to be fired at the bye week. If we get swept by the Giants, this time with Danny DeVito at quarterback, it's over. Shit is over, bro. So, in my mind, next week is a win. You beat Seattle, that's 3 in a row. And the importance of beating Seattle is you have a chance to then get over 500. That's something that, you know, has really eluded us late in seasons when we go on these runs. Last year was the first time that we actually exceeded 500 in November. Normally, we're chasing, right? Because we dug ourselves such a deep hole early in the season. 2020, we were 1-5, we were 2-7. Okay, we were 2-7. We won 4 in a row, and we still were 6-7. Then we lost 2 in a row and won the final game and ended up 7-9. Right. So even after winning 4 in a row, you still weren't at 500. 2021, you were 2-6. You won 4 in a row. And you still were at 6-6. And then you lost 4 out of your final 5 and you ended up 7-10, right? Last year was the first time that we started the win streak early enough. And it wasn't just 4. Last week, it was crazy. It was 6 out of 7, which is what allowed us to get to 7-5, right? You have a chance to do that again this year. You got a chance to get to essentially 6-5, right? With a chance to go to 7-5 with the win over Dallas on Thanksgiving. You have a chance to really catapult yourself into a different conversation if you can beat Seattle, then get the Giants, and now you're 6-5. Who knows what Dallas is going to do between now and then? And honestly, I don't give a shit. I don't care. All I care about is us. Because that's all we can control is what we do. You beat Seattle, and all of a sudden, you're back to 500, and then the Giants are waiting for you at home. You should be 6-5. Now we're talking about a team over 500. Now you got a little bit of house money you playing with now, right? Because even if you don't beat Dallas on Thanksgiving, you still 6-6, right? Like the worst case scenario. No, the best case scenario. No, I said that right the first time. The worst case scenario you're hoping for this team is that at the bye week, you're 6-7. That's worst case scenario. That means you won 3 in a row, more likely than not, depending on how they come. And then you didn't get it done against Dallas and Miami, and you head into the bye at 6-7. You're still going to be in a playoff chase if you're 6-7. Trust me, 6-7 will have you right there. However, you don't beat Seattle, then you beat the Giants. You're 5-6. You lose to Dallas, you're 5-7. You lose to Miami, you're 5-8. Now shit's different. Way different. Now you can think about potentially firing Ron at the bye week, right? It's totally different. This Seattle game, sort of like the Denver game at the beginning of the season. This is a swing game. I felt the same way about Denver early in the season. You needed to beat Denver because you knew what was staring you in the face the next 2 weeks, Buffalo and Philadelphia. You lose to Denver, you're 1-1, you could be 1-3, shit could go sideways real quick. You beat Denver, you're 2-0, you're 2-2 after those 2 games if they don't go the way you want them to. The next 3, you got a chance to redeem yourself, right? Now, we blew that by not beating the Bears and not beating the Giants. However, the opportunity was there, and it was because we beat Denver. I feel the same way about this particular game against Seattle. If you take care of Seattle and you beat the Giants, it puts you in a position that even if you don't get it done against Dallas and Miami, you're still in a position to try and make the playoffs. You don't beat Seattle, then you're going to have to go and beat somebody that you're probably not supposed to beat. Whether it's Dallas or Miami or both of them remains to be seen. But if you lose to Seattle, it's not over. But you're still climbing up. Because the first goal, like I always tell people, don't talk to me about the playoffs till you get back to 500. Like, don't use the P word in my presence if you're not even at 500. Okay? Like, if you're not even at the Mendoza line, don't even talk to me. So in order for us to even start having realistic conversations, we got to get back to 500. You beat Seattle and you're back to 500 with a chance to climb over 500 against the Giants. You lose to Seattle, you're 2 games under 500, and you may never get back to 500. Because even if you beat the Giants, you're 5-6. You could lose to Dallas, you're 5-7. You could beat the Dolphins, you're 6-7. Or you could lose to the Dolphins and you're 5-8. You're never going to catch up at that point. This is a big game. I said all of that to say this. This is a big game. A lot is riding on this game. Video channel. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB, who writes, "Sup, Lou? Sup, video channel? Hope you and the fam are good. Likewise. And we are. Thank you for asking. Looking forward to the false resurrection starting Sunday in Seattle." Well, the false resurrection. Shout out to my guy. Shout out to my guy Joe Rockhead for the false resurrection. You know, false death, false resurrection, and then ultimately real death. We're not hoping for the real death this year. We're just hoping for the false resurrection that turns into a real one, right? Like it's a real resurrection. We've been born again, and we're not going back to the life of sinning anymore. If the false resurrection is to occur, it started last week, beating New England. You're supposed to be on a 2-game heater going into a 3-game against the Giants, you know, beating the Giants and making it 3. This is, if it's going to happen, this is the false resurrection. Matter of fact, I need to see what the schedule is. I know we got the Rams somewhere after the bye, the 49ers, and let's see. I need to see exactly what the schedule is, because all I know is what the schedule is up until the bye. I don't know what it is after the bye. My brain wasn't trained to go that far. So after the bye, it's the Rams, then it's the Jets, then it's the 49ers, then it's the Cowboys. Okay. So on the road twice and then home twice to finish up. So we should beat the Rams. Again, I don't want to go too far out into the future, but that's a good game to play after the bye, right? That's a good one to kind of get the juices flowing. I hope Aaron Rodgers doesn't come back. I really just hope the Jets season implodes and he just says, F it, I'll be back next year. Because that would be a nice little opportunity to get 2 games under your belt. Now, I say that Jets defense is wicked, and they might put some shit on Sam's ass and still win the damn game, right? So who knows? I don't want to get too far ahead of myself. I don't want to get too big from the britches, as the old folks like to say. So now I know the schedule, so I don't have to worry, guess about where the rest of the games are. On the road for the Rams, on the road for the Jets, home for the Niners, home for the Cowboys to finish up after the bye. So I know the rest of the schedule. That's pretty significant, though, because so that scenario that I just said, if you get to the bye and you're 6-7, you got a chance to get right back to 500 after the bye on the road at LA against the Rams, right? Who knows? It could be Carson Wentz. We can see an old buddy of ours and bless him, right? So that makes this game even more important. Again, you don't have to win this one. You can beat Dallas. You can beat Miami and still have the same record and have the same result. It's just a harder road to go. It's a harder path to forge, having to go to Dallas, having to go home and beat Miami, rather than just take care of Seattle if you can. Put yourself in that position. Get that momentum. I'd love to head into Dallas on Thanksgiving with momentum of a 3-game win streak. I don't know about you, but I'd love to do that. But we'll see what happens. John Perez, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you, my guy. JP. Double up. Thank you for doubling back. I want Ron gone, but I think they should at least try and go for a playoff spot. Well, they're going to try and do that, John. Trust me, they're not going to lose games intentionally. They're going to try and go after the playoff spot, buddy. He says, they're all tired of losing, especially John Allen. Plus, Seattle is very meh this year, and they're beatable. Hashtag NHO. And they have been very meh, and they are beatable, but so are we. You just described us. We're meh. We're very beatable. So Seattle's looking at us like food. They're thinking to themselves, and I'll talk more about this tomorrow. They're looking at us like, hey, this is a week to get our shit together right here. Let's get our shit together and let's get well on these boys, man. We got to stop them from getting well on us, because I'm going to tell you right now, they got a nasty taste in their mouth. One of the worst things that can happen to a team when you got to play them the next week is they got their ass handed to them the week before. They're going to come out with such focus after getting embarrassed the way that they did last week. That doesn't bode well for us. Just so you know, they're pissed off at what happened last week. Christopher McLaughlin, my guy. Chris, stand up. You know what it is. You in the building. Thank you so much for your generosity, gifting 5 memberships. Thank you so much for blessing the mob and adding members to the MOBB. You know what it is. Welcome to the squad, to all the members that our guy Chris has blessed. Thank you so much for the support. Alex Bonfield, thank you for being a member for 13 months. Who writes, living in Seattle, excited to finally attend the game at Lumen to quiet the squawk fans. Wife and I will be wearing big-ass burgundy and gold behind our sideline. Hopefully, we'll get a shot of you guys during the game. You know what it is. You know, I only have one request, all right? One goal, one mission, one band, one sound. You know what it is. Go in, get the dub, bring it on home. You know what to do. All right? Make it happen, Captain. All right? Hopefully you guys enjoy yourself and you come home with the dub. That's what it's all about. Mike Lowry, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Mike Lowry, writes, what up, Lou? What's up, Mike? No pressure, but who's our next head coach? And if you don't have a few names, what direction should we go with the roster currently constructed into next season? So yeah, I don't have any names other than Ben Johnson. That's the guy that I've kind of looked at. But you know, I'm taking a step back from the whole head coaching thing because I'm kind of like looking at EB and saying, "Hey, bro, you want this job?" And he's like, "Damn right, I want this job." I'm like, "All right, prove it." So I'm kind of like cooling off a bit because I kind of like what EB's doing right now. And I already said that I was really hard on him, but he's starting to kind of meet my expectations that I had set for him from the jump. And that was unrealistic expectations that I set for him. And so now he's starting to come around. Kind of like what I'm seeing. Don't want Sam to have to learn a new offense again next year. So kind of pumping the brakes on that a bit. Kind of looking at EB and saying, "Hey, man," I told him this after the Bears game. I said, "EB, you on the clock, bro. You got 12 games to prove that you're either head coaching material or you're not." And I said, "Your clock starts now." And it took a while. You know, it was rough those first few weeks after that Bears loss. But I feel like he's starting to kick it into high gear, starting to get a lot more comfortable. Guys around him are starting to get more comfortable. I think things are starting to go in the right direction. He's calling better games. Want to see where this goes. So kind of pumping the brakes on the old head coach stuff. I will say this, roster-wise, it's going to be interesting to see what happens when they bring in, because whatever happens, there's going to be a new general manager. Because you can hire a new GM and say, "Hey, we're going to go with Eric Bieniemy." And that's okay, because even if that GM doesn't necessarily love EB, if EB gets it done, everybody's happy. If he doesn't, the GM gets to fire him and get his own coach in here, right? What's going to happen if you get a new GM is you're going to get new players. That's whether EB likes them or not, that shit's happening. So the question then becomes, what direction do you go in with the roster? And that's a hell of a question, because there's a lot of guys that are currently here that this regime loves that would be back if they were back. But not knowing what the next, GM and how they view some of these players will think. Cam Curl is a prime example. This regime would re-sign Cam Curl in the offseason. Worst case scenario, they'd slap the franchise tag on him, right? Next regime, it may be like, "Hey, here's the offer. Take it or leave it. You don't like it, go out there and see if you can get something better." And a lot of times when you do that to players, they will take a deal that is less than what you offered them just off the strength of principle. That's what happened to Dalton Schultz. Cowboys offered him a deal that I'm pretty sure he's looking back on like, "Shit, I should have took that deal." They franchise tagged him. He left. He ended up signing a 1-year prove-it deal with the Texans. He could have got that same deal with Dallas, but he's like, "I'm not going back there." And they was like, "We're not bringing your ass back," right? Jaron Reed did the same thing. He left. He wanted a deal from Seattle. They wouldn't give it to him. Off the strength and principle, he left, took a less deal than the one he got in Seattle, took a lesser deal in Kansas City, only to realize, "Damn, I miss Seattle," and he ends up going back to Seattle. So a lot of times players will do things strictly off of principle. You lowball Cam Curl, he might be like, "Nah, F that, I'm gone," and end up taking a deal that's lesser, or a 1-year prove-it deal somewhere just to say, "F y'all." Just like what Chauncey Gardner-Johnson did with he could have got that same deal in Philadelphia. He signed a 1-year deal. But it was the principle of it. Like, "Oh, y'all gonna lowball me? I think I'm worth this much to y'all, and y'all telling me, nah, I'm not worth that to y'all? Well, you know what? F y'all. I'm gonna go out here and see what's out here." And they was like, "Well, there ain't really shit out here for you, bro." So he took the 1-year deal. He could have got that in Philadelphia. There was a multi-year deal on the table in Philadelphia. They wanted him back. But off the strength of principle, "I'm not coming back." That could happen with Cam Curl, right? Kendall Fuller is a guy that we want back. This staff would bring Kendall Fuller back. I don't know if the next group is going to bring Kendall Fuller back. I want Cornelius Lucas back. He's one of the best swing tackles in football. I don't know if the next regime is going to... This regime will bring Cornelius Lucas back. Are you kidding me? This group would bring Tyler Larson back. I don't know if the next group is going to value Cornelius Lucas or Tyler Larson in that manner. So there's a lot of those types of players that may be back, may not be back. You can get out of Charles Leno Jr.'s deal. He's got one more year left on his deal. You can save yourself some money under the cap if you cut him after this season. The next regime might come in, off with his head. Right? Go draft him a tackle in the first round, off with his head. Make him a post-June 1 cut. Because you don't want to cut him before you get a guy in the draft, because it may not work out that way and you may need him. As soon as you get that guy in the draft, off with his head. He's gone. Right? And we can say that about a number of positions. Logan Thomas, I think he has one more year left on his deal, if I'm not mistaken. Draft you a young tight end, off with his head. Right? That could happen. Next regime. This regime believes in Logan Thomas, loves him. Next regime comes in here, I don't need a 32, 33-year-old tight end. All right, and whatever Logan is. I know he's 30 plus, right? Off with his head. I'll let the young fellas have it. Let's see what they can do. So this roster could go in a totally different direction. Just depends on who's calling the shots. New GM comes in, all bets are off. All bets are off. Christopher McLaughlin, my guy, Chris, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy, Chris, writes, hey, Lou, what's up, Chris? Hope all is well with you and the family. Likewise. Thank you so much for asking. Everything is going well. He says, looking forward to the going to the game. So you're going to the game as well, again, just like I told Alex. You know what it is. So you must be either out in the Pacific Northwest or you just are somewhere out on that West Coast. Either way, go get them, Chris. You know what to do. Bring it on home. One goal, one mission. You know what it is. Bring it home. All right. How committed do you think Bieniemy will be to running the ball this week, especially after Keaton Mitchell went off for the Ravens? So we don't have a Keaton Mitchell on our team. So let's start there. I don't know. That's part of the growth maturation that I'm looking for from EB is consistency. He's no different than these players. He's no different than Sam. What did I talk about with this team? The biggest thing that I want to see from this team is consistency. We lack it. Since Rivera's gotten here, we've lacked consistency. All right. You don't know what team is going to show up. Every week, it's a different team where Dr. Jekyll. Hell, you don't know what team's going to show up from drive to drive, quarter to quarter, let alone game to game. We don't know what team's going to show up half to half. Falcons game, the offense is unconscious. They can't be stopped. Second half, those dudes never came out of the locker room. You never really know with this team. So EB's kind of, I'm putting him in that same box. Like, I just want consistency. The last 2 weeks have been excellent. Can we do it again? And then again. And then again. Right now, I don't know. He really made a concerted effort to run the ball against New England. It was so fun to watch. He got under center. He did it from the gun. There was a fullback. There wasn't a fullback. There was so much variety, and we didn't even jet sweep. We didn't even do anything. There was no tosses or anything super creative, but it was just the variety. That's all I've been asking for all season. All I've ever asked for was just spice it up a bit with just a little bit of variety. Go under center. Go with a fullback. You can run out of the gun still, but get under center a little bit. And he did that. Is he going to do it again? I don't know. I'd love to see it. I'd love to see it. Sovereign Legacy. Thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Sovereign Legacy writes, what's up, Lou? What's up, Sovereign Legacy? My one and only game I've been to was at Seattle with Big Sexy Rexy. Love seeing the 12th man exiting before the 2-minute warning. That was fun talking smack to those boys. Great memory. You know, something else that scares me going into this game is how much success we've had on the road. Like, I don't want to know these things. Don't tell me this shit, because it never bodes well when we actually know this stuff. You know, right now, Washington is 7-1 in the regular season against Seattle on the road. Only, you know, we only struggle against them in the playoffs in Seattle. But in the regular season, we own those boys on the road. Don't tell me that shit, man. Don't tell me that. Don't tell me that. Because that makes me feel like we're due for a nasty L, right? We own the season, the series, the season series, the all-time series rather, over them. And it just seems like, yeah, we can do this. I'm not falling for the banana in the tailpipe. I've been gotten too many times. I'd rather, like, I usually tell y'all, hey, and I'm good about this at the beginning of the season. Hey, give them a chance. Don't go in protecting yourself. Be vulnerable, right? Our mantra for years, especially when Dan was here, was always, hey, hope for the best, expect the worst. That's how I went into every single game. Hope for the best, but I'm expecting the worst. But, you know, as things change and you begin to have hope restored, I'm like, hey, you guys, give them a chance. Don't be negative. Think positive. We can do this. We can do it. We can do it all night, right? Come on. Let's go outside. Everybody's like, yeah, let's go outside. And then quickly you lose to the Bears and you lose to the Giants. Everybody inside, right? Come on. You guys are going in by the droves. Let's go inside. And I'm like, hey, don't leave me out here by myself. And there's a couple people like, man, I ain't going inside. I'm staying outside with you. I'm at the point now, though, after those two losses, I'm outside, but I'm protecting myself now. So I've reverted back to the old school way of going about business with this team. Hey, I'm hoping for the best in Seattle, but I'm expecting the worst. That way, I can't be let down and disappointed, okay? When I expect bad things to happen and good things happen, I'm pleasantly surprised. That's no way to go about life. That's not usually how I operate because I'm an optimist. However, this team has shown me that being an optimist is dangerous for my health. So I'm going back to my safe way of thinking. I'll come back out and I'll be aggressive against the Giants because they ain't shit and I expect to beat them. And so I'll talk my shit next week. But this week, not so much. So let's hope that somehow, some way, we're able to go in there and get it done, right? And I can be happy on Sunday night. The likelihood is we'll fight, we'll give a valiant effort, but we'll make one too many mistakes and Seattle will beat us. Or they'll just beat the brakes off of us because defensively, we're not very good. That could happen too. We'll see. I just know this much. I'm not falling for the banana in the tailpipe. I just know that. Not this time. The best streaks are the ones you don't see coming. Well, guess what? I don't see it coming. So, surprise me. Humor me. I'm glad you had a good time back in the day with Sexy Rexy getting it done on the road. Christopher McLaughlin, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. My guy, Chris, thank you for being a member of the MOBB. Double up. Thank you for doubling up. My guy, Chris writes, hey, Lou, you were wondering about 9 wins. The Giants, Rams, Jets without Rodgers, Cowboys at home, and maybe for nothing for the Cowboys. Truthfully, yeah, that might be the case. We seem to win one unexpected each year between Miami, San Fran, and Seattle. Thoughts? That's the way you have to look at these things. Where can we get 5 more wins? Right? the Giants, Jets, and Rams are all winnable games, especially even if Rodgers plays. That doesn't guarantee like if he comes back, we'll be one of the first games back. He's not going to just come off the bench and just be firing BBs and being like they already had questions when he was fully healthy about how this Jets offense was going to look. Even if he comes back, he might not come back, sharp as attack. Remember, this man's coming off of an Achilles injury. Like, you're not supposed to be back this quickly from that. I almost still feel like he's pulling our leg here. Like, there's no way you can come back this year from an injury that's supposed to be 6 months of recovery time, and you're damn near 40. No way. I think he's pulling our leg, but he plays quarterback. He doesn't have to stop, cut, turn, and be a dynamic athlete. So he doesn't need the Achilles to be, back to 100% to go out there and plant and throw, especially with his arm talent. But kind of believe like he's kind of stringing us along, right? Like if he's able to come back, it's going to be late in the season. We're late in the season, right? We're the third to last game of the season. It's week 16. That's right around when he would come back. But for the sake of this discussion, Giants, Rams, Jets, all three of those very winnable games, right? That gets you to 6. That gets you to 7. Now you need 2 more wins. You say the Cowboys game at home could be for nothing, and it might be that they've already locked up a wild card spot, can improve their standing in the wild card, don't need the week 18 game, et cetera, et cetera. But in order for that game to matter, remember, that's not week 15 or 16, that's week 18. For that game to matter, you got to take care of business prior to that to make that game a win and you're in type of scenario, or win you need help, but you got to take care of business type of situation, right? So that might come too late. You know what I'm saying? So, again, just like it did last year, had that Cowboys game come sooner and we were able to take care of business against them, maybe we're able to get into the playoffs, but it came at the end of the season. So, again, who knows? But like you said, there's usually one unexpected victory every year. I'm looking at the Dolphins as that game potentially. Could be the Seahawks, right? Because, again, you name the 3 teams, the Giants, the Jets, the Rams. If you can get Dallas once, let's go get them on Thanksgiving. What the hell, right? And you beat the Seahawks. There you go, right? Got your 5. But it's easier said than done, right? I don't see us beating Seattle. I don't see us beating Dallas on Thanksgiving. And so I don't see us beating Miami. Don't see us beating San Francisco. Like, there's a lot of ifs, big ifs. But to your point, the opportunities are there. But again, we shouldn't even be having this conversation because we shouldn't have lost to the Bears and the Giants the first time. So it's hard for me to think all of a sudden, and I get it, as the season progresses, you get better as a team. And I told you, I think the Giants game was a turning point for this staff and for these players, specifically offensively for EB, Sam, and the rest of the offense. I think that Giants game was sort of a wake-up call for them in particular. I don't think that changed anything defensively, but I think offensively, I think the Giants game was a rude awakening for them, and they've been so much better since. So it could impact how we play moving forward, and we may be able to win a game or two that we wouldn't have won earlier in the season that we're now capable of winning because we're a better team because of some of the bumps and bruises that we've taken earlier in the season. But again, we'll see. I like the way you think, though, Chris. I like the way that you think. Elf Life, thank you for being a member for 2 months. Who writes, I remember when I started watching ball, your vids popped up in my rec, and I was like, man, get this old head off my phone. Why you always got to come for my neck, man? Why you always got to come for my life? Huh? You could have said everything you just said and left the old head part out, right? Why you always got to come for me, man? He says, then I gave your vids a chance. One of the best choices I've made. Love your vids, Lou. I appreciate that. I always feel like the hardest part is to get people to click on the video, right? Because I'm the same way. I see a bunch of, videos in my timeline and on my feed, and I'm like, get this shit out of here, right? And sometimes if you just give something a chance, you just never know what you might find. And I'm so confident, borderline cocky, when it comes to this type of stuff, because I'm confident in me. I can't speak for anybody else. I am confident in me. So my thought process is always, if I can just get them to click on the video once, they'll never leave, right? It's just about getting them here. Now, that doesn't always work. And I say things that can be abrasive to people, and, oh, he doesn't know what he's talking about. And if you're looking for a cheerleader, rah-rah type of fan, I'm not your guy. So, it just depends on what somebody's looking for. But in my mind, I'm always thinking, if I can just get them to click, they're never going to leave. And I'm glad that worked out for you. So I'm glad I'm the old head of choice for you. And I'm glad you decided to come back over and over and over and over and over again. Shout out to my guy, Elf Life. Nate Master, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Nate writes, what scares you or stands out from this Seahawks team? A lot scares me. For starters, and I won't get into it. We'll talk more about that tomorrow on Behind Enemy Lines, but I'll just give you some surface level stuff. Their receiving core scares the hell out of me, because I just told you earlier that I really feel like Emmanuel Forbes playing well and confidently is the best version of this defense, specifically on the back end. Who's he going to cover this week? Jackson Smith and Jigba? Tyler Lockett? DK Metcalf? I'm nervous about the receivers. Mac Jones had opportunities to carve us up. 4th down on the very first possession. That's a wide open receiver. That might be a touchdown if he hits him in stride. There's a receiver up the field, one more defender. If that receiver blocks that defender, he goes behind that block and walks into the end zone. It's a touchdown. Geno Smith is not missing that pass. A lot scares me, but I'll just stop right there. That scares me right there. We're playing a better quarterback and a much better core of receivers. We've seen what good receivers and a competent quarterback has done to our secondary this season. Hell, I don't even know if Justin Fields, you can call him a competent quarterback. Not when he came to see us, but by the time he left, he looked like a damn Pro Bowler. We know DJ Moore is of that caliber. You saw what he did to us. We've seen what A.J. Brown has done to us twice. Yeah, I'd say I'm pretty nervous and I'm scared of their receivers. Duncan Wright, been a member for 13 months. Writes, 8-1. I'll see you tomorrow on my day off. Be ready for some smack. Hey, you know where to find me, man. I ain't never scared. You know where to find me. Metaphor, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Metaphor writes, so Lou, you saying you outside with an umbrella? Me too. Don't want to catch a brick. Don't want to get rained on, right? Yeah, I got my umbrella. Always got an umbrella with me. But I'm not using it right now. But when you go out there to Seattle, it's always raining. So make sure you got your umbrella in tow. Right? That goes for you, Alex, Chris, and anybody else attending the game. If you live out there or you know about Seattle, then I don't have to explain to you. I don't need to lecture you on making sure you travel with an umbrella. You can check the weather before you go to the game, see what it's supposed to be. But it just seems like spontaneous rain happens in Seattle. It could be a perfect day. It's not supposed to rain. And then all of a sudden, it just starts drizzling for no reason. Whatever. I'm definitely outside. Y'all know where to find me. It's good to know you're outside too. Spence Kalis, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. Thank you for being a member of the MOBB. My guy Spence writes, after what AJ did to us twice, Metcalf will kill us. I don't want, because Metcalf isn't the same as AJ Brown. They did play together, but we always felt like AJ Brown was the best of that trio of receivers that was at Ole Miss at the same time. There were 3 of them. They all made it to the NFL. Obviously, 2 of them were way more successful than the other, but A.J. Brown was always the best of the trio that was at Ole Miss at that time. And I still think that holds true now. Metcalf is a physical freak. And if we're not careful, he scares the shit out of me because he's so fast. He's so big. He's so fast. And like, one of the things I was looking at in preparing for them was he's their leading receiver. And I'm looking at Terry's numbers and I'm like, oh, Terry's got him in yards. And then I look at the catches and I'm like, shit, Terry's killing them in catches. But then I look at his yards and I look at his catches and I'm like, wait a minute. Kind of an average are we talking about here? Like, he's got 28 catches for like 489 yards or some crazy shit like that. And I'm looking at Terry and Terry's got like, 47 catches for 500 and something yards. So, Terry's fighting for every inch he can get. Meanwhile, DK is probably averaging like 18 yards a pop. Terry's probably over here averaging like 12, 13 yards a catch. DK's almost at 20. And I'm like, oh, shit. So that's the nature of DK. He can hurt you so quickly. He can take a slant and go 67 yards. Or he can run a little double move, or he can just run by you. Geno lays it up there, and it's a 67-yard touchdown. So he's different because AJ isn't really a speed demon, right? He's more of a physical guy that can body you up. DK can do both. He can just flat out run by you. That scares me. C Trill, thank you for the super chat. Greatly appreciate you. C Trill writes, do you think other teams fear our wide receiver group? Fear is a strong word. Respect is what I think teams give our receivers. I don't think our receivers strike fear into anybody's heart because we're not consistent enough right now. We got to beg Terry to be involved in the offense. Jahan just is getting on his horse. Curtis has been really solid, but Curtis doesn't scare anybody by any measure. But all of them are really solid. Terry's a really good receiver, and when he gets going, he could be a problem. But I don't think anybody is like losing sleep over having to guard our receivers. You know what I'm saying? Until we force teams to respect what it is we do offensively, there won't be any fear factor when it comes to Washington. Having Sam at quarterback, I think, could help induce fear. But even with Sam playing well, he's spreading the ball around. I think it'll be more likely that teams fear Sam and what he's capable of, and then they'll mention our receivers as an afterthought, like, yeah, man, this Sam Howell guy is really damn good. And then he's got some really good receivers. That's how they'll mention them. It won't be, man, Washington has a tree. Like, how they used to like really like be over the top with our defensive line. Oh my God, Washington's got one of the best D lines in all of football. You know how they used to do that shit every week? And a lot of you was like, man, y'all get out my face with that shit. Our defensive line, mid as hell. You keep talking to me about these first round picks. They don't be doing shit. They don't be impacting the game like that. That's what fear sounds like. Hey, we really got to do a good job of stopping their pass rush because they got 4 guys, first round picks across that deep. That's what fear sounds like. I don't think people really view our receiving core like that. I think they respect them. They know that they're capable. I don't think they fear them, if that makes any sense. Anyway, I digress. That was the final super chat. You guys, thank you so much for joining me tonight on the show. Look forward to chopping it up with you guys. Tomorrow, we'll have Thursday Night Football. Yeah. Bears and Panthers. That's disgusting. So if I don't see you for that, probably won't, then CNN will be out tomorrow. CNN will be out Friday as well. Probably see you for the Louie T Network podcast on Friday as well, barring any unforeseen circumstances. So we'll see how all of that unfolds. But again, appreciate you guys kicking it with the kid. And I look forward to chopping it up with you guys the rest of the week. You guys have a good one. You know what it is. Post up. Take command. You guys have a good one. Take care. God bless. And good night.
Here comes the diesel. Here comes the diesel. There's the snap, hand to Riggins. Good hole. He's got the first down to the 40. He's gone. The 35, the 30, the 20.